All right, starting fresh in UDK, we're gonna go ahead and say File, New Level, and let's do Night Lighting. So we're gonna let that open up, and then now that we have this open, we have our map with basically just like a simple box. It's just the default night level lighting. So first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and get our package set up. So we're gonna go to View, Browser Window, Windows, and Content Browser, and that's gonna open up this window here. And we're gonna go ahead and make a new a new package here. So we're gonna go ahead and name it. We'll name it Digital Tutors Sign, and that's gonna make this kind of just a blank object right now that sits in here. It's gonna be an anim set. So we want to go ahead and save this. We'll save it to our desktop for right now. And with that saved, we can now reload it from our desktop again. So we have Digital Tutors Sign. So we're going to go ahead and import the mesh that we created before, which is the sign EDK, and we're going to put it into the group mesh. And we're going to rename it Sign Mesh. Keep all these settings the same. We want to combine meshes, don't have to worry about anything else. Set up, say OK. So now we have our sign mesh in here. Make this a little smaller so you can see it. So now our sign's in here. Pretty good to go with that. And we're going to go ahead and bring our textures in as well. So we're going to delete this anim set because we don't need that anymore. And we're going to import our textures. So we have our sign emissive and our sign diffuse. And we're going to put these into the texture set. So compression, we can just leave the same. Say OK. That's going to import this. Take a second. And here's the sign emissive. So we're going to say OK, we're good for that. So now we have our two textures in here in our texture settings. So we're going to save that. And it's compressing the source art real quick for that. And we're going to say new material. And we're going to put this in the matte grouping. And we're going to name it sign matte. Okay, so now we have this set up. It's going to bring up, we can bring up the actual material and start setting it up. So we're going to go ahead and drag our texture of our sign into our material over here, as well as our emissive. So we'll go ahead and plug these in for us here. So here's the diffuse texture. We'll plug that into diffuse. And here's going to be the emissive channel. And we can plug that into the emissive. So you can see here, the emissive channel is not quite acting right quite yet, just because we don't have it set up like we want it. But you can just see this is going to be the place it's going to be going into. So I'll go ahead and say yes to that, and we'll go back to our mesh, double click that. And we can apply the material that we just created to our mesh through our LOD info right here where it says material. So we're going to click on the sign mat and apply it. And now that it's applied to our mesh, we can go ahead and bring it into our scene so we can kind of see what we're working with. So if I go to my mesh, bring it into the scene, I can now see the sign texture what I'm working with in UDK. So it's getting all those materials and everything just kind of initially set up before we start actually messing around with some of the shader here. So now continuing on, we're going to go ahead and start setting up our emissive here. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to separate, we're going to kind of separate these channels off, and we're going to multiply each channel by a specific color to pick the color that we want for that channel. So we're going to hold down the M key and click, and that's going to bring up the multiply function. I'll make this a little smaller for you here. And so we're going to need 3 of these. So I'm going to control copy. And these are going to be right like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply each channel. So the red, the green, and the blue are going to get multiplied by a color. So what we're going to need is hit the 3 key and click, and that's going to bring up our color vector, a three vector here, and we can make this a specific color. And this color is what we're going to be multiplying to make the color of the light. So you can see here, I'm going to copy this 3 times as well. And this one is going to be the blue channel. This one's going to be the green channel. And this one is going to be the red channel. So let's go ahead and select some colors here just to kind of get it set up so you can see what we're doing. So that's a green. And let's just make this one a random color. So the blue is getting a blue, the green is getting a green, and the red is getting this kind of pinkish color. So now what we're going to do at the end of all this math is we're going to add it together. So we're going to add once. And we're going to add these two. And now you can see, if we route that into the emissive, we now have direct control on what color the light is going to be. So now you can see this is blue, green, and the kind of pinkish red here. So now we're able to separate the colors based on what we actually want to color it. Now continuing with that idea, what we want to do next is we want to make the blinking lights. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a sine wave in. And this sine wave needs time to go forward, so we're going to add a time node in as well. And we're going to put this time node in here. And this time node and sine node are going to be controlling the flickering of the light. So what we want to do with that is we want to actually have it so that this is going to be controlling the balance between whether the first set of lights that we've made here is on or the second set of lights is on. So we're going to need an if statement. And this if statement is basically going to say if this value that's going through the sine is higher than 0, which I'm going to make a 1 and make it 0. It's kind of like basic math here. So when you're saying the 0 is the kind of like the base number that we have here, and the sine is fluctuating above. It's going to 0 to 1 back and forth. It's going above and below, right? So with that, what we're going to say is basically say if A, which is the sine, is more than B, then it's going to be one set of light is going to be showing. So we're going to say the first set of light. And if it's equal, we can say it stays the same. But if it goes below it so that B equals more, then you want to fluctuate it. So you can see here, it's changing between these two sets. But we don't want the red to be that first one. We actually want the blue because that has our smaller lights in it. The red is actually the bigger motel lights. So you can see here, it's hard to kind of get a view for it, but I'll preview on the mesh. And you can see here, it's switching back and forth now between those two light sets because the sine wave is moving back and forth. Now also cool about this is you can change how much it fluctuates based on the actual the sine. So you can change the sine here to 7. and it'll be a little slower on how it changes back and forth. So you can kind of pick where you want it. You can make it 0.1, you can make it flicker really quickly, you can do anything you want it to do based on that. So I'm going to say 0.8 for now. So it's a good flicker back and forth. It's got a pretty consistent stream. And so we're going to go ahead and add that back into our thing over here. And that's going to add that to our overall thing here, and it's going to make it start so that it flickers correctly. So now we have our main sine color and then our two flickering lights. And if I turn this on real-time preview, you can see it'll flicker back and forth. Now I'm not quite happy with where the intensity of this light is at right now. It doesn't really feel neon. And I want it to really feel neon, like I want it to pop out. So how we're going to fix that is let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit here. So this, I'll go ahead and say right click, new comment. This is our regular lights. And if I select these, new comment, these are flashing bulbs. This is our main texture. Move this down here. Go ahead and comment this. This is our flickering, our flashing light controls. So we have that. So one thing I want to change about this is that I'm not too wild about is I want to make sure I want to up the intensity, but I want to control it per set of lights. So I'm going to add another multiply in here. And anything that goes into the emissive that's above 1 will actually have a kind of a really bright glow to it. But you want to be careful in not going too overboard with this because you can really blow it out if you're not careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the regular lights by a number. Extend this some so I can move this inside with it. And I'm going to multiply it by a single digit number. And I'm going to route this into here and back into the add. And this is going to multiply, let's multiply it by, let's try 3. And let's change this to kind of like a dingy yellow, which would be more likely of the color of that kind of the bulb's lights. So we'll say yes to that. And we can test to see what that looks like. If we right click and say preview on node. So you can see that's looking pretty decent. We can even blow it out even more, and I'll show you the effect of that. So if you multiply it by more, you get more of that blowout look. So let's set it for 8 for right now. And then we're going to copy this part right here and do the same for this part at the top. And these I might not want so bright, so maybe I'll set this for 6. And I'll go back to previewing this on the mesh. So take a look here. This actually is too bright now, and this is not bright enough. So maybe we need to switch that up. So let's up this to say 12 and change this to say 4. Because this is not always an accurate approximation of what it's going to look like because you have a lot of other things happening in the actual editor that might change that. So as you can see, this is starting to look pretty decent. And this is still a little too bright, but we can keep working on that. I'll change this one more time to say 3, and I'll up this to, let's say 20. So it's looking pretty good for right now. So that's pretty much the light setup for that. So now that we have the light set up, we have the emissive in, we're pretty set with how we're going to be controlling our emissive for right now. So let's continue on with the actual neon bulbs that we're going to be placing on top.